today is Kelly Leask, owner of Prairie Originals located in East Selkirk, Manitoba. Kelly is a grower, educator, and advocate for native perennial plants. Through her work, she's helping shift how landscapes are designed and maintained, promoting the use of native species to support biodiversity and reduce long-term inputs. She's also constantly innovating within her own operation, trialing new propagation methods and expanding production to meet growing demand, all while sharing her knowledge through tours and workshops. She's also a passionate mentor, building a team of emerging horticulturalists and guiding a community of gardeners who are eager to learn more about native plants. That impact has earned her recognition as one of our She Grows honorees this year. Kelly, it's great to have you here today. And on behalf of Greenhouse Canada and Fruit and Veg Magazine, let me congratulate you on this well-earned recognition.
Thank you very much for having me here today and for speaking with me.
It's our pleasure. So I think what I would like to do is start right at the beginning. Like, how have you found yourself as the current owner of Prairie Perennials?
Really, at the base of it is I got lucky. I knew very little about native plants when I first started working at Prairie Originals. So yeah, I had finished going to university. I studied languages, so nothing related to horticulture at all. And I had been traveling, and then I was looking for a summer job for when I came home, and I happened to connect with Shirley Freilich, who owned Prairie Originals. She's the founder of the company. And I was able to line up a summer job working for her. So I started working at Prairie Originals in 2013. And I had a little bit of experience working as a gardener and like a general interest in nature and gardening and plants and things, but no formal training and no real professional experience. So I was taken on just as a summer student, and like I said, I knew very little about native plants, and it was an incredibly eye-opening summer, and I just became so much more aware of what the tallgrass prairie is and was, and how it's been impacted by development, and the fact that like there's a really important conservation issue around native plants in Canada, and it's something that I thought I could help to contribute to in a good way. And Shirley she started Prairie Originals in 1990, and at that point she was kind of starting to be ready to retire and looking for options to kind of hand things off to someone else. So she asked me if I was interested in management and eventually ownership. And like I said, I just kind of finished university and wasn't quite sure what my next steps in life were going to be. But after one summer, I was totally hooked and very on board. And yeah, so it was just this opportunity that got dropped in my lap, and and it's taken over my entire life in a really good way.
So are you from the area?
Yeah, so I grew up I was born in Alberta, and then I moved to Manitoba when I was 7, and so I grew up in St. Andrews, which is close to where actually it's very close to where Prairie Originals, the original Prairie Originals was. And then when I started working at Prairie Originals, it was second location, and now we've moved to our third location.
Wow, that's a lot of moving in the last.
There's a lot of moving, yeah. It's been a long road, but a good one.
Yeah. So what does a typical day look like for you, especially during, your busy growing season?
Yeah. So, I mean, every day is a little bit different. We definitely are. We're in the busy season now, I would say. So every day is different, and every day is pretty long. I'm unfortunately not a morning person, so I'm usually up and at it by 8:30, and that's when the staff show up. And unless it's a hot summer day, then we'll start earlier. But so I'd say the kind of key things that I'm doing day to day are keeping plants alive, making more plants exist, running the sort of administrative piece and doing the actual business piece of things. I do lots of customer service, lots of customer communication kind of stuff. And then trying to sort of big picture planning for the future and trying to achieve some big goals and big dreams, and think of not just the day to day, but also trying to get things done on a broader scale. This time of year, I'll start in the morning. We'll start with a morning meeting. We'll kind of get the team distributed to doing different tasks. Right now we've got lots of seeding, lots of potting. We're going to be starting to pull orders, and we it's a late spring this year here, so we've just taken plants out of winter storage last week, which was late for us.
Yeah.
Maybe the latest ever actually. So yeah, plants will be now we've got plant care, so we're keeping the plants alive, and we do things quite unconventionally. So we grow about 150 different species of plants that are all native to Manitoba. And because what we're doing is quite niche, there's not a lot of opportunities for purchasing seeds to grow these plants. So we do all of our own seed production as well. We have a small retail nursery here, so we open a bit later than most nurseries, so we'll open towards the end of May, and everything we grow is perennial, so it's a good time of year to be putting perennials in the ground and things that are. I like things to be hardened off by the time we open, and so people can just plant plants in the ground at the right time of year when it's a little bit more practical. Um, yeah, so yeah, we grow a bunch of different kinds of plants and we do all of our own production, and we do a little bit of wholesale to a couple other garden centers, and I go to the farmers market during the summer. So yeah, we're preparing for all of that right now, getting our outdoor space set up to grow plants and pull orders and then be open for retail. And then yeah, once we open, then there'll be customers coming and going all the time. So we'll be taking care of them, and soon we'll be out in the field doing planting planting new seed production plots and doing lots of weeding out there too. And then yeah, there's all the business pieces of it. You have to do payroll and make the schedule and try and keep the website updated and all the things.
That is a long list of things that you have going. Um, so I guess I'm curious that, what part of that work do you find you draw your inspiration from, or you find motivates you?
You know what? It is the plants. It's a funny thing how sometimes a thing that you're really excited and passionate about can lead you down a path that involves learning a bunch of different skills that you weren't necessarily interested in learning and don't particularly love to do, but you have to do it as part of the bigger picture. So, yeah, it's a funny thing that, after I do lots of, bookkeeping and planning and a little bit of marketing kind of stuff and preparing for the season and all that kind of thing over the winter, and there's never enough winter for all my winter projects, so it's not just sitting around resting as much as it could be, I guess. But it's funny that like come spring, as we take plants out of winter storage and they're starting to wake up, and then going for a walk in the field to see who's sprouting, and then as the plants start to bloom, it's kind of like it hits me every year. Then like, oh yeah, I really like plants.
Yeah.
That's why I do all these things. And then like native plants they're the foundation of a habitat. So wherever you have a diversity of native plants, you're going to have a diversity of wildlife and insects and birds. And so at this time of year, it's migration season. So as I'm out there, watering plants or organizing things, and yeah, my ears listening to the killdeers that are flying overhead, and yeah, just paying attention to all the birds that are coming back. And one of my big goals for Prairie Originals at this new location, we just moved here. We opened here like a year ago. So this will be our second season at this new location. So we're still getting things really set up here, but I'm planning to be in this place for a very long time, barring any unforeseen circumstances. But one of my kind of big picture goals for success in life, if I'm doing everything well here, I want to create nesting habitat for 50 different species of birds. And I think if I can achieve that, then I'll know that I'm on the right track in life.
Yeah, that's a lofty goal, but I love it.
Yeah, I think we'll be able to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too, especially with all those natives, right? All those native perennials, right? Like that's their bread and butter. So
Exactly.
you're obviously a very vocal advocate for native plants. And so I wanted to tell me about this category of plants that has attracted you. And why are you so passionate about sharing that with the world?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, my eyes were like blown open when I started working at Prairie Originals, and I am someone who's interested in conservation, and I really like nature. And I grew up in Manitoba, and I don't think I had an appropriate level of awareness of what's happened to the tallgrass prairie here. So the tallgrass prairie is the historic landscape that's been here for thousands of years, and in Manitoba, there's probably less than 1% of the tallgrass prairie left intact, and some reports would have like significantly less than 1%, and it's small fragments. It's not like big chunks, and feel like I should have known that. I feel like it's a sort of a gap in the education system that people aren't more aware of this. And yeah, because if someone who's kind of generally interested in nature and things. If I didn't know about it, then yeah, I'm sure people who aren't interested have no idea.
Yeah.
And so I think there's two sort of pieces to gardening and growing native plants. I think that the native plants need us. We've converted so much of the landscape to lawns and to development and to agriculture, and we interact with our landscape in a very different way than the historic tallgrass prairie. So we've really reduced the plant populations of native plants in Manitoba and across the prairies, across North America. Although Manitoba is like pretty significantly, we've got kind of maybe one of the worst situations here. And yeah, just I feel like, as a child, I learned about like slash and burn agriculture in the Amazon rainforest. I know I learned about coral bleaching, but I don't know if anyone talked to me about, or at least I didn't come to understand what had happened to the tallgrass prairie here, and that it's one of the most badly damaged and least protected ecosystems in the entire world. So there's I think a really powerful opportunity for conservation within a gardening context. Like any space that you can give back to native plants has a positive impact. And because they're the foundation of the habitat, all of the insects, all of the birds, all the other living things that share the space with us, their habitat is going to be improved if we can put the plants that they need, and the resources that they need back into the landscape. So I think there's a piece of it where the plants need us, but also native plants can do so many good things. I think that, like I like to say that if you plant a native plant to do one good thing, it'll do 10 other good things at the same time. So maybe you want to have a butterfly garden and you want to increase the habitat for monarch butterflies, so you plant some milkweed. That's great. But at the same time, if you've got like native plants that are going to provide habitat for wildlife, they're going to help sequester carbon. Tallgrass prairie is incredibly good at sequestering carbon.
Hmm.
It's going to help to protect soil. It's going to help to protect water by filtering nutrients out of surface runoff. It's going to help to keep the space cooler. There's so many good, powerful things that native plants can do, and also they don't need as many resources because they're adapted to like the ecosystems that they evolved in. And so they probably need some support while they're getting established. But if you choose the right plant for the right place, you shouldn't have to water it once it's established. You shouldn't have to fertilize it. You shouldn't have to protect it over the winter. So there are way less maintenance and way less inputs. And yeah, there's all these powerful things that native plants can do for us that can make our life better and easier.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they need that space. They need that space to exist. So it's just like a really mutually beneficial thing.
What do you wish more people understood about the value of native plants?
Um, yeah, I think that I wish more people understood that they need to be protected and valued differently. Around here, I think if you find a native plant in the wild, it's probably growing in a ditch. And that's like one of the very few places that are like left where native plants are kind of allowed to exist. So people don't value them and see them for what they can do. I think so. I wish people understood that there is this conservation issue that we can contribute to in a really positive way. And it doesn't have to be like a big sacrifice or a big hardship. It can just be a small change of choice of plants. Yeah, I wish that people understood that native plants need us and that they're special and that they are more rare than they are, or than people understand.
Do you feel like you've been able to, uh, get that message across to some of the municipalities or landscapers you've worked with? And
I think a tiny bit, but not as much as I would like. I feel
yeah.
like I'm still like early days in this journey, and I feel like there's a lot of room for improvement. And that was a big piece of why I wanted to move to this new place, is to give us more space to give demonstrations of how you can use native plants in the landscape and just create a point of contact for people to come learn about native plants in a way that's safe and comfortable and supportive and welcoming.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You recently expanded and introduced new greenhouse and propagation systems. Can you describe that process? My greenhouse readers are going to be very interested in that, and its impact on the ongoing work that you're doing. Why was this kind of the next important step for you to take?
Yes. Okay. So the greenhouse is like a brand new thing. I've never grown plants in a greenhouse before. I've got plants as of maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I have plants in a greenhouse for the first time ever. So yeah, I've been growing plants for over a decade and never used a greenhouse.
Wow.
we do things unconventionally in a variety of different ways. Like growing native plants is unconventional as a baseline, but kind of and like we're small scale, which is okay because it gives us flexibility to try different things and do things in a unconventional way. So I bought Prairie Originals in 2020, and I bought the land that we've moved to now in 2017. So we've been here for it's been a long road to get things set up at this new place, and it was just vacant land when I bought it. Um, so through sort of a long journey of trying to figure out how to get things set up here and how to build a building and what kind of infrastructure we were going to need at this new place and how to make it all come together. I ended up buying a building that it was the offices for a construction company. The building was built in the 90s, and then when that company, all the owners retired, and they sold their office building. So they sold it knowing that it would have to be moved, and so I bought this building and had it moved here. So that was a whole journey as well. They had to break it into two pieces and put it on two big trucks and haul it over here. And it was like the coldest day in January when the building got dropped down here.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah, so it's been a whole adventure to get this building set up. And where we were at our previous location, which was Prairie Originals like 2.0, so we're at Prairie Originals 3.0 here. So the second location, Shirley built that house, and they built it so that she could move Prairie Originals to that location and expand Prairie Originals from the original location. So at her very first location, they bought a house. It was like a 1 acre property. She did everything by herself, and she basically went out in nature and harvested seeds, and it was the early 90s, so you couldn't Google how to propagate them. And so she just did trial and error and kept amazing records, and figured it out, and then planted plants around her yard so she could harvest seeds from around the yard and did landscaping kind of at that scale. And so she did everything that way for a long time by herself, and then got some part-time help and reached a point where she really maximized what she could do in that space. And so they decided to move to a new location so that she had space to do seed production on a bigger scale, and so that she could start growing some shrubs as well, and do that in the field. And so they bought a 5 acre hayfield basically, and they built their house, and they built it so that she could run Prairie Originals at this new location. So they built it so the whole basement was basically a grow up that had a built-in cold room, and then the shop was kind of a detached garage sort of situation, and it was run seasonally. And so that worked really well. And that was a great setup, and growing things in the basement was kind of an interesting way to do things, and it worked pretty good. Yeah, just under grow lights. And we do like the majority of our growing we do outside, like the vast majority. And I've been leaning more into that and experimenting more with that in the lead up to this move, because the new building doesn't have a basement, and it doesn't have a cold room. And the cold room is really actually one of the things that's making life challenging for me and kind of forcing me to do more experiments and try different ways of doing things. And so, yeah, so the greenhouse was kind of part of the strategy to deal with that and to just give us some options and flexibility. So I was using it a bit, and it's a very simple greenhouse. It's like a 20 by 30 hoop house basically, and I can run an extension cord to it, but there's no heat system. There's no the ventilation, I think, is a weak point in the design, so that's maybe going to become a problem at some point. I can run a hose through the window from the building. If it's in the winter, I could do it that way. And now the tap's running. It's warmer now, so I can run a hose in there. But so the infrastructure is and the utility access to the greenhouse is very simple. So over the winter, when it was quite cold in there, it would get warm during the day, but definitely like freezing solid at night. I've been seeding trays and then popping them into the greenhouse to let them cold stratify. And then I brought some of them back inside. I've got a little kind of grow up set up in this building too, with just like lights on racks. And so we've been playing around with stratifying that way. And so far, I think that worked out not too bad. Yeah, I've also been seeding trays and then doing like a speed stratification method. So you seed the trays, and then I put them in a wagon, and I put the wagon outside for 24 hours. Well, it's, February in Manitoba, so everything freezes. And then you bring it back in for 24 hours and let it thaw. And then you just repeat that for a week or two, and seeing if that will give sufficient cold stratification for germination. And that has worked decently well as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we've been leaning more into doing fall seeding as well to kind of skip this playing around with stuff over the winter. And then we do lots of seeding outdoors in May as well, because not everything needs to be cold stratified. So yeah, and then the plants that are growing in the greenhouse right now, it was like kind of one tray each of a bunch of different species, and we just put them in there in March, and there's no heat, and they're germinating or they're not, and we're going to observe that and see how it works and see how the timing of all of that compares to things that we started inside versus stuff that we seed later or that we seeded in the fall. Yes, I revamped my entire seeding spreadsheet this winter, and kind of because I'm doing so many different methods and trials, I lumped them into 13 different sort of classes of techniques that I'm trying. And then I've color
Wow.
coded them and then in June I'll do an assessment of what worked and what didn't work and what's worth trying again and which are the easiest ones to kind of lean more into. So yeah, the greenhouse is really right now what it's doing for me is giving me a place to play and to experiment and to see yeah, what's possible and what's practical. It's been a really cold April here too, so we're doing a little bit of potting in the greenhouse before it gets like totally hot in there. Yeah, and then I think in the summer I'll end up taking the cover off and swapping it for shade cloth, and then I'll be able to use that as a space for growing woodland plants, because that's another challenge that we have at this new location is that there's no shade anywhere around here. So
Wow.
yeah, so it's hot and sunny and yeah, it's tough to grow woodland plants in baking hot sun.
It must be quite fun to have kind of like to be able to do this kind of like experimenting or playing,
Yeah.
especially for something that you're so passionate about.
Yeah, and and it's fun because it's there's things that you kind of predict and you have a sense of what you think is going to work or what may or may not work, and then sometimes it surprises you and it
Yeah.
works or it doesn't. And then you have to repeat it a bunch of times to see if there's an actual pattern there or if it was just because it was a cold April that it worked or there's there's too many variables at play in a lot of the ways that I'm growing things for it to be like a good experiment design. So I have
Hmm.
to just, try things and observe and then repeat it a bunch of times to see if patterns emerge. But yeah, it is fun and it is exciting.
Yeah. How many people do you have working for you right now?
Right now, there are myself and 5 others, and then there will be another one starting on Monday, and I'm hoping to get a couple more to help
Yeah.
later in the season too.
Through that process, that's how has that changed your approach to growing native plants? Has there been any specific line of query that you followed that
I think what I have learned is like really just to be patient.
mm,
And sometimes if you try something and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that those seeds weren't good or that they're not going to grow. Like there's definitely times where I'll try to germinate something inside and get like really patchy germination, and then when we move those plants outside to harden them off, there'll be like a whole another flush of growth. And maybe it's just that they wanted to feel the sun, or maybe it's the fluctuating temperatures from night to day. Maybe that's the thing that triggered it. Um, so yeah, sometimes I'm tuck things away and just wait
yeah.
and see what happens a little bit rather than like completely writing things off. Yeah, there's been other times too where I don't do like a lot of I do like the vast majority of my propagation we do from seed. We do a little bit of vegetative propagation from woodland plants because they often spread by root and are easy to propagate that way, and sometimes harder to propagate from seed. But we do some shrubs as well, and most of the shrubs we just like seed them in the field and then just wait. And some shrubs some shrubs will seed into containers and they'll germinate quite reliably that next spring. And some do not like to be in containers to germinate, or at least I haven't figured out how to keep them happy through that. And then there's some shrubs that just take at least 2 years to germinate or more, or it depends on the conditions. So when it comes to shrubs, I'll seed them in the fall and just try and keep my good map and good records of what was seeded when and where. And sometimes they don't germinate until 4 years later, and then
Yeah.
you let them grow for a few years before you dig them and pot them. Um, so yeah, just like being patient, but we do a little bit of propagation from hardwood cuttings, and I don't think it's something that I've like really delved into in a very serious way. There's some things like red osier dogwood and like pussy willows. Those are fast and reliable and yeah, they're reliable. But there's other things I played around with a little bit, and I think I probably got the timing wrong. But I remember one year doing some grape cuttings, and so we stuck them in a pot in the spring, and they did nothing all summer long, and they didn't sprout or anything. And I had kind of written them off and was intending to throw them out. And then the next, like a whole year later, they started growing leaves again, which totally caught me off guard. So I don't know, plants kind of keep you on your toes. I think maybe that's what I've learned from all experimenting, is to be patient and be humble.
Yeah. It's almost like they have a mind of their own, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
What has your experience? We're here, we're talking about your experience as a grower,
Mhm.
and as a woman
Mhm.
in this industry. How has being a woman in the horticulture industry in Canada shaped how you lead your business?
I've had like a really great experience, I would say, as a woman in horticulture in Canada. It has been like very limited. Like Prairie Originals is the only company related to horticulture that I've ever worked for. But I had an amazing mentor, and Shirley started this company by herself, and she learned everything about how to run a business and how to grow native plants by just doing it, and just keeping good records and trying different things. And yeah, she's been so incredible. Like the legacy that I got to step into is like absolutely like a gift. Um, and something I really appreciate and value and yeah, respect a lot. And so yeah, I feel like I got really lucky because my niche little experience has been wonderful.
Yeah.
And now as an employer and as someone who's teaching other people, I would say that like the majority of the people who apply to work at Prairie Originals are women.
Hmm.
And so the team tends to be pretty like women forward, I would say. And there's been lots of seasons where it's been all women. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think women are wonderful and so incredibly capable. Um, yeah, so that's been really good. Um, yeah.
I think you and Shirley are proof that, you can uplift one another, right?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
And I'm really happy for you that you had that experience with her. She sounds like a lovely individual. And seeing what you're doing, it does sound like a very rich legacy, you know.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
um, so then what advice would you give to young women or and I love this because you can kind of like look back on yourself or a younger version of yourself interested in building a career in this sector.
Mhm. Oh man, it's kind of funny to think of like advice that I would offer to my younger self, and I
No.
don't think I would, because I think what I know now about, some of the challenges that we've overcome in the process in the long road, I think it was probably better that she didn't know and just like was brave enough and willing to take that leap. And I'm really happy with where we've landed. And there's, I still have like lots more things that I want to achieve, and even getting things set up here, there's still lots more to do. But I think I like. I almost do kind of think of my past self as like a different person in some ways because, well, we've just had different experiences, but she did good. Yeah. But I think like in general for kind of advice to offer to other women who are interested in horticulture and maybe to my past self as well, I think like just take good care of yourself. Like this job can be like physically very demanding, and it can be pretty stressful, dealing with living things in unpredictable conditions. Like it can be very hard. So yeah, I mean, like this is very basic advice, but stay hydrated and eat properly. And this is a good example that I learned from Shirley too. And she did many things better than I do, and she set a very good model for me. But she would like physically prepare for the growing season. She would ski lots over the winter, and as soon as the snow melted, she'd be out running and jogging, and she would like run up and down the stairs in spring to just be like physically in good shape to be ready for the season. Um, which I think is probably a smart thing to do. And yeah, just recognize that it can wear on your body, and, just wear a hat and wear sunscreen and take good care of yourself. But then I think other things kind of more broadly in the horticulture thing, one thing that I wouldn't say it was like a plan, but it's a thing that happened that I'm really happy about was I have found a sense of community through this work at Prairie Originals. And that came originally from kind of volunteering and just like attending lots of events and talking to people. Um, yeah, taking classes, joining the garden club in the town here has been wonderful. So you can kind of like, yeah, make connections and build community. And that doesn't have to be, specific to horticulture, but just like anything that you're interested in doing and pursuing as a career. Um, I don't know if I'm not like a real like businessy person, but I guess it's kind of networking, but I like to frame it more as like building community. And yeah, and then also like if there's any way you can find a mentor, like that's an incredible resource to have. And I think like formal training is wonderful. I didn't have any stepping into this role. I have taken some classes since then, but and I think yeah, formal training is good, but it's not the be all end all. And I think that's an important thing to know too. Like learning like on the job experience is hugely valuable. Learning from a mentor, and there's just like so much information out there. It could be, could be following someone on Instagram. It could be finding a great YouTube channel. And there's so many books and yeah, so many like free and accessible webinars. Like there's so much information and so many different ways that you can learn. It doesn't have to be like you don't have to go to college or university necessarily to get the information that you need. Not that there's like nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't have to be the only road.
Yeah. So what does She Grows mean to you when you think about your own journey and the community that you've helped build around your passion for perennial plants?
I was like thinking about this and like about this word grow and what does it mean? And it's like, it's, maybe just to make things bigger or to diversify, or like to grow your your knowledge is to kind of expand your learning. Maybe to grow your impact and connect with more people. Maybe growing in some ways is like kind of a process of maturation. Or like as a grower, the thing that we do is we help something to start and then we take care of it and help it to live in a good way. And so those are all, kind of what growing is about. And I think like there's lots of overlap in some ways between like plants and ecology and also business. Like there's resilience and diversity in both realms. But I think yeah, growing and just kind of recognizing that like everything has a lifespan. And if you want, like for me, like everything has an impact in the world and I want my impact to be good. And I would like to build something that can be bigger and go beyond my own self and my own life. So yeah, trying to figure out, and I wouldn't say that I know how to do this, but trying to figure out how to create, something that's going to have a long-term impact in a really broad way. And I think building community and sharing information, sharing knowledge, and whether that's through having staff and being a mentor to staff, or I started a native plant club. And so I've got, a group of people who come here once a month and we all just, revel and have fun doing stuff about native plants and kind of make friends about, with people who have that shared interest. And I think that's something I've been really enjoying. But yeah, I think trying to build something that's going to outlast me and have a long-term positive impact. That's the kind of growth I'm aiming for, I guess.
Yeah.
Hopefully does that answer your question?
I think it does. I think that was a very thoughtful answer. And I think you're well on your way to cultivating that growth. Your ambitions with Prairie Originals, I think, are wonderful. And the fact that you've been doing this as long as you've been doing it, I think speaks to the quality of the work that you're doing. So congratulations.
Thank you. I feel like my experience of spending every day with native plants is so unique, but it shouldn't be. Like people should be surrounded by native plants, and that's the future I want for myself and everyone.
Yeah. And I think, you know what? That's a great note to end this on. I think that's a great wish for everybody and is really at the heart of why we selected you to be featured in this series. Your passion comes through, and I just want to thank you for all your work, and thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Well, thanks for your interest. Yeah, I want to shout it from the hilltops that, native plants are the best.
Well, everybody knows now. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks very much.
I would just like to thank Kelly Leask, who is one of our first She Grows inductees, for joining me to speak about her experience as a woman grower in the Canadian horticulture industry. And on behalf of Greenhouse Canada and Fruit and Veg magazine, thanks to you for tuning in. Please be sure to check out the conversations with our other inspired growers featured as part of this year's group of She Grows honorees.